I'm excited to announce that we've got an author joining us now who's written an entire book about it. This is going to be if you're a fan of this show, I know you like serious investigative reports. This is your next summer read. It's called Blowback: The Untold Story of the FBI and the Oklahoma City Bombing. We have the author, Margaret Roberts, joining us now. Margaret, how are you?
Great to be with you, Jack. Thank you.
So tell me, what drove you to write this book and why put it out now?
Well, it was a calling, originally from a victim, a survivor of the bombing, but I had been the news director of America's Most Wanted until about 3 years before the bombing. So I lived and breathed manhunt stories, Jack. And while I had moved on to Los Angeles on April 1995, when that bomb went off, I was in Los Angeles. And like millions of other Americans, I witnessed very quickly on live television the apocalypse, the destruction, the injury, the horror of that moment. And I had two perspectives. One, just like everyone else, just horrified and wondering who could have done this. But the other was, I had lived and breathed manhunts for 3 years at America's Most Wanted, working hand in glove with the FBI, closer than a journalist would ever probably get. So I looked at the early reporting on the bombing as a manhunt story and felt even a little bit like, oh, I wish I could be back in the newsroom and tap my best sources and find out what was going on here. Because as you remember, or no, some of us remember, others learned.
I remember. By the way, was a huge fan, even as a youngster, huge fan of America's Most Wanted. Definitely something that I would say led me on the path to becoming an intelligence officer in my own life, because I've just always been interested in these things.
Oh, that's so great to know. Not too many television shows last for 20 years. And so you can imagine in my path going forward, I have met so many people who were touched by that program. And John Walsh and his work it abides to this day. It was a manhunt story, and that, in particularly to your interest in intelligence, Jack, it was incredible that it was a manhunt story that quickly melted. But if you go back to April 19, the eyewitnesses, 24 of them, just ordinary people in Oklahoma City who saw the bombing run or moments of it, they saw two men in the Ryder truck, Timothy McVeigh and his never identified accomplice, known only as John Doe 2. 24 eyewitnesses, and they described him as stocky, muscular, well-built. That is the big clue to one of the biggest, greatest American, crime mysteries. Who was John Doe 2? And that leads, I don't get to answer your question how I got into it. Mostly that sat in my head. I was producing other television shows, but 10 years later, I did get a call from a survivor who knew I was prowling around like you. It was a story. It keeps coming up because anybody who looked at the story knew there were so many loose ends. I mean, just to mention a couple more that told the tale that we were not receiving the truth about that story. Quickly, top journalists were reporting that the FBI had collected surveillance videotape of the bombing run of McVeigh and John Doe 2 getting out of the truck, and even the building exploding. And when you consider that this is the biggest, it remains to this day the deadliest domestic terror attack on American soil, it's amazing that the American public was never allowed to see those videotapes. And lastly, as evidence that the story was not being told, a grand juror inside the McVeigh grand jury was so disturbed by what was going on that he went rogue and began leaking to the Daily Oklahoman. After the indictments came down, he wrote a long letter to the judge and said the federal prosecutors running that grand jury were rigging the jury, and in particular, hiding the identity of John Doe 2. So that all stayed with me. And 10 years later, when I learned, doing a little prowl around research the way we do on anniversaries, this year is the 30th, but that was the 10th, I was stunned to discover that the FBI, after all the prosecutions were over, after there was no reason to keep secrets, the FBI had still never allowed the American public to see that videotape. And that told me there's a story here. So when I got the call
we only
from
have
a survivor,
couple of minutes.
a grandmother who had lost 2 babies in that blast, she didn't even really identify herself. She just said, "We need your help out here." And now, Margaret, the way you're sometimes called to a story.
Just in the few
I
minutes
got
that
on
we
a
have
plane and
left
went to
with you,
Oklahoma City.
are you able to tell us just in a few minutes? And this is definitely a teaser. So for the book, I want people to get it. The book is called Blowback, and it's really the untold story of the Oklahoma City bombing and the FBI. What tidbits are you able to leave us with before you have to run?
You bet. I'm the only journalist to connect back to what you were talking about, Ghislaine Maxwell. I interviewed Terry Nichols in Supermax prison in Colorado. And Terry Nichols, his claim was that Timothy McVeigh had let slip that he operated in the bomb plot, not as a terrorist, but as an undercover government operative. Obviously something that needs to be corroborated, as you were pointing out before, but there is some outside corroboration. McVeigh told his original attorneys, the public defenders who quickly exited the case, the same story, and he wrote a letter to his sister telling the same story. The other major cutting edge of my investigation is that an FBI whistleblower came out of the shadows in 2011 to tell my main source in this book that he had been an FBI top spy for 8 years in the 1990s, and that he knew for a fact that the FBI had set up this neo-Nazi terror group